And welcome back to Mystara, and welcome back to Glantri. This week we are looking at the second of the revised Nation box sets from 2nd edition, Glantri, the Kingdom of Magic. Granted, Glantri is a confederation of principalities, but Glantri, the Principalities of Magic, is a bit of a mouthful. The book makes massive changes to the nation, with 2 provinces obliterated, 5 new principalities added, 2 of the original princes dead, and the most famous one missing. I'm a day late. I'm fighting a cold if my whole voice isn't a dead giveaways. But I'm going to be moving next week, and I don't know when I'll be posting again, so I wanted to get this out today. Hopefully I should be back in a couple of weeks. I'm Mr. Welch, and let's talk about Post-Wrath of the Immortals Glantri. Glantri, Kingdom of Magic, was released in 95, the last year of Mystara. It was created by the legendary Monte Cook, with the credit given to Bruce Hurd, who had actually left TSR by that point. Cover artist Paul Jacques, with a number of numerous interior artists. The box set follows the Karamikos formula exactly, with a 128-page main book, 32-page adventure, the audio CD that dates this expansion badly, rather nice map, and several handouts for the players, and some adventure hooks and some pre-gen characters for the adventure. Quality of the product is fine. TSR really knew how to put books together at this point. It's just they weren't putting out products people wanted to buy. The first thing you're going to notice is this is a kindler, gentler Glantri. The nation is still an absolute mess, with princes at each other's throat. Prince Volaspir and Vlarden are dead. Prince d'Amberville is missing, and Prince de Malapetri is a raving madman in a land absolutely devastated by the meteor hit during Wrath. Glantri has softened its stance on divine classes now, as there was a plague caused by the war that decimated the nation, so they brought in as many clerics as possible to stop the spread. Well, everywhere except Moldavia, because vampires are allergic to clerics. The nation no longer feeds clerics to black puddings as entertainment, but clerics that get uppity are still not long for the world. Glantrians aren't suddenly all into the hugging. They still dissect dwarves and hen given the chance. This book is set in 1013, 13 years after the original Gazetteer, 3 years after the Wrath of the Immortals blow up. There are 5 new principalities in the nation, some of which were hinted at in the original book about were going to be created, and some of them that happened because of Wrath. The first of the new principalities is Bramaya, led by House Krenegar. They're just an extension of House Singabad, both coming from Ethengar stock. It's a small, unassuming province with not even 10,000 people living in it. They don't actually get a lot of mention in it. They're just a province that was created because they had room and they had people living there and they wanted to organize it. The Principality of Finswick is the smallest of the provinces with just over 5,000 people. It's ruled by Dolores Hillsbury of House Hillsbury, who pretty much just leaves her province to rule by herself. Despite being a tiny and new province, it has enormous power, having secured the allegiance of the powerful House Ritterberg and has browbeat House Cole for support. Her rise to power is meteoric, but she's also gaining enemies just as quickly. Known as the Valley of the Wolves, Morlaix-Malenbois is a tiny principality with about 5,000 citizens. The province is famous for its acceptance of lycanthropes of all types, numbering about half of the total population. It actually has very little power in Glantri, but it is tolerated because it draws all the lycanthropes into Glantri into just one location. With Glantri suddenly finding monsters in vogue and the nation turning into the darker pastimes, old prejudice towards the lycanthropes are helping the province suddenly. The first principality populated by humanoids in Glantri, House Cole, is run by former High Doge Cole from the Broken Lands. It's located in the Great Crater where the meteor blew up the southern portion of Glantri. The province has almost 30,000 humanoids living in it, as creatures from the Broken Land flooded into the crater. Glantri is torn about accepting the humanoids, as they haven't stopped raiding the other provinces, but they are protected by the powerful Dolores Hillsbury. They wouldn't be Mystara if there wasn't continuity changes, so Prince Cole is no longer a kobold. He's now a shadow elf that was twisted at birth and left for the humanoids to discover. If you want to keep the change, it's up to you, but it does seem a strange change that was never even hinted at before. Sablestone is another recent province, created as an effort to tame some of the wilder sections of the Glantri's wilderness. It's the least Glantrian of the province, existing mainly for mining and creating an infrastructure more than magical research. Its prince, Harold Haskins, is extremely powerful politically due to his taking over the Great School of Magic from the missing Etienne d'Amberville, and the fact that he has no inspirations for further power. He's just a safe choice for minor lords to support. Most of the other provinces from the original book are largely unchanged, though Bergthoven has a new princess, and so does Nouvelle Averon. The only exception is the Principality of Erewhon, which is almost under siege by monster attack, and Dolores Hillsbury has made it her mission to deny any aid to the elves, both militarily and economic. Because of this, the Principality is falling into ruin, especially with Alfheim getting obliterated with the ham-fisted Shadow Elf takeover. My original complaint about the first book remains. The book only discusses Glantri City in detail and ignores the rest of the nation. While the book doubles in size, it actually contains less information. Most of the extremely detailed economic information is gone, and the large amount of organizations and factions are really pared down, especially with the sillier ones like Elf and Fairy getting the boot. There are 11 pages of new spells, including new radiant spells and a prototype metamagic spells that lets you modify another spell that you cast immediately. The book does do an excellent job of giving new spells a very Glantrian vibe, with names of the spells trending towards the verbose, giving even Glantrian names for classic spells. So Charm Person becomes Utter Enthrallment, Lightning Bolt becomes Kiss of the Storm, and Invisibility becomes Shield from Mortal Eyes. Now, if any of your players are actually going to talk like that, you need to sit them down and explain that it's just a game and you don't have to actually get that much into the game. Glantrians can be melodramatic, but your players don't have to be. New spells include Discern the Heart of the Beast, Swiftly Devour the Written Word, and Landscape of Spell Lore. It includes horrifically powerful spells like Grasp the Magic Sense Used, which automatically reverses a teleport spell to the surprise of the person trying to teleport away from you. And it also has the almost useless Calistram's Canal Conveyance, which is a 3rd level spell which summons a gondola. Now, giving credit where credit is due, the magic in this book perfectly showcases what makes Glantri unique of all the magic nations from any setting. It makes it the best fantasy magocracy written. Glantri doesn't just research new spells, it researches new magics. If another school of magic is going to be found, it will be found in Glantri. Their spells break accepted rules, both in crunch and fluff. When I converted the spells to 5th edition, one complaint was the meta spells deliberately broke the rules regarding casting 2 spells in one turn, with neither of them being cantrips, but that's intentional. Glantri are the evil scientists of magic, wizards who have no qualms of pushing the boundaries of magical research. They have progressed in magical prowess faster than even Alphatia, though Alphatian wizards, to their defense, have a much better chance of not dying in accidental lab explosions. Insurance rates in Glantri at this point are probably punitive. Glantri's secret crafts of magic are represented, of course, and they've been updated for 2nd edition. The new rules are much cleaner, I'll give them that, with penalties for using the crafts, and some renaming to avoid confusion with 2nd edition elements like illusion being an actual school of magic, which was missing in Beckme. Glyphs are now cryptomancy, illusion is now dream mastery, and witchcraft is now wokenism. Strangely enough, necromancy is still necromancy, despite it also being a school of magic. I've seen people rename the necromancy craft either high necromancy, and I renamed it thanatology, because there is some confusion with having 2 aspects of magic both having the same name. The Radiance gets its own section, although it's not updated in canon from Wrath. Despite the Immortals attuning the nucleus of the spheres to drain magic from the sphere of entropy, this book still has it draining magic normally. All the classic Radiant spells are there, updated for 2nd edition, with a few more spells and some expanded rules on creating Radiance-related items. The biggest issue is that the book directly contradicts the ending of Wrath. In fact, it contradicts the very point of the war that started Wrath of the Immortals. The last bit of the main book includes rules on progeny, which changed Mystara lore greatly and really didn't work very well rules-wise. Mystara didn't do crossbreeds, because Beckme rules didn't do crossbreeds, but Advanced Dungeons & Dragons has them. So now Mystara is in 2nd edition, and the game world was changed to be more like the generic D&D settings like Forgotten Realms. First thing they did was let everybody get it on with anything and everything, and that's where the progeny come from. So now people have ancestors from any number of creatures that include dragons, nymphs, satyrs, Rakasta, Firbolg, which were very different in 2nd edition than 5th edition, Medusa, Diaboli, Actaeon, How? Crones of Chaos, or any creature under the effect of a polymorph spell. So yes, if you polymorphed a squirrel into a person and had sex with them, then you got pregnant, there was a chance that your child would become a squirrel progeny and have squirrel-like abilities. At least reading the rules as written. If you want to make your character a progeny, you have to roll on a chart to see just how much progeny they are, and most of the results are bad. There's a 50% chance you failed. You're not progeny. Whatever your parents told you, they said that you were related to, like George Washington or Elminster or Fizban. They lied. There's a 40% chance of being progeny with just a cosmetic appearance, so your skin's a different color. That's actually a very bad thing, as you'll see in a second. There's a 2% chance of actually having a penalty for being a progeny because you're cursed, or you have some negative trait. And there's only a 5% chance of having a beneficial power and which actually some of them can be quite game-breaking. You can get anything from a +1 to +3 stat bonus. You can get a permanent spell on you at all times. There's a few other ones, but some of them are pretty nice. But again, you've only got a 5% chance. Now, if you do have progeny blood, no matter whether if you were blessed, cursed, or just had purple skin, you do get the advantage of your lifespan is tripled. The downside, and it's a major downside, is you get a permanent 15% penalty to all experience. So you've got a 5% chance of getting a stat bonus and a 40% chance of getting a massive penalty for leveling up. I prefer to keep the crossbreeding rules the same as the Back Me version, requiring immortal level magics to allow it, making the set a lot more unique, but the progeny rules as written are really bad. The main Glantri book is a bit of a mixed bag. There's continuity issues, the progeny rules, like I just mentioned, are a total mess. The Radiance rules are largely cut and paste from the original book and not taking into account the events of Wrath of the Immortals. On the other hand, it did clean up the rules for the secret crafts, it gave us all sorts of new magics, and best of all, it gave us Sin, one of the best villains in Mystara. So get ready for some spoilers, though most of you are, I'm sure, are very familiar with Sin, especially if you've read the ALMANACs. You know how I mentioned Dolores Hillsbury gained a lot of power quickly and has been a thorn in the side of Erewhon? Well, it's because Dolores is actually Sin, the night dragon, who murdered a Glantri noble and took over the role of her daughter. Yes, it's the same Sin that was the big bad of the Voyage of the Princess Ark, and she really gets around. Sin has been charged with the Entropic Immortals to turn Glantri into a chaotic hellhole, which, to be honest, it wasn't far from with its internal politics. She seduced Prince Yager, she recruited Prince Cole, she eliminated quite a few rivals. Her first goal is to purge the Erewhon elves out of Glantri through constant monster attacks and denying them any and all aid. Because of Mystara's cancellation, Sin's storyline was left on a cliffhanger. Her enemies were trying to expose her true form to the rest of the Parliament when Joshuans came out, but that was it. To make things more interesting, there was a very good chance Etienne d'Amberville was returning to Glantri, who would have immediately recognized her true identity because, well, spoilers, he's an immortal. It would have made for a great adventure for Glantri to go out on, but we're going to have to wait till Mystara to come back to get closure, assuming that we keep the unpopular Wrath of the Immortals timeline. The adventure tied into the box set is a Harry Potter-style School of Magic adventure, which is a dungeon romp, as the name suggests, set entirely in darkness. It's a beginner's module, which creates a unique challenge for players, but it's friendly enough you're not going to wipe out the first level party. It does hurt the game because of the lack of a cleric, but there's not too much danger in the module. Because this is a second edition Mystara product, it's got a CD attached to it, which is necessary to play the adventure. I'm going to say that this is a lot over the next few weeks, but the CD has not aged well. It was not a good idea to begin with. TSR was floundering in '95, and they were looking for ideas. Now CDs have been replaced with downloads and streaming, and there's a lot of us that don't even have a CD player. Instead of putting out good quality products and stuff that people actually wanted to buy, they gave us gimmicks and like fancy flashcards or mass-produced accessories that were obvious cash grabs. Sadly, unlike the Karamikos box set, no one has uploaded the Glantri CD onto YouTube. I don't know if there's a place to find the CD separately. eBay's really your only option I can think of, and even then the CD doesn't appear on there at all very often. Finding the box set isn't hard, but it's not cheap either. You're going to be looking anywhere between $50 and $80 to find a complete set. Found mine at half-price books for $50, and then I had a 50% off coupon. Most of you aren't going to be that lucky, but I'm rather proud of finding that deal, and I had to brag about scoring it. You can get the PDF for $8, but you're not getting the CD, which makes the module unplayable, so that's overpriced in my opinion. That's Glantri 2nd Edition. Is it an improvement over the original? Not really. It's partially because Wrath left the setting in such a mess. It's also keeping with the theme of the post-Wrath timeline, where that a lot of bad guys' intentions got removed. Prince de Malapetri went from a serious villain to torment the party to a toothless madman guarding a blasted wasteland. The internecine spats between the nobles originally presented in the first book are much more isolated. It doesn't help that this book doesn't break down the rivalries and alliances that were so superbly presented in the original. Monte Cook is famous in game design. His contribution to 3rd edition was massive, but he's not Bruce Hurd. Glantri and Mystara were not Monte Cook's babies. It helps that Cook loves wizards more than anything else in design, often to the exclusion of other classes, so Glantri was perfect for him to try to write. But the lack of continuity with the Mystara setting, with either the Wrath of the Immortals or the original Glantri Gazetteer, makes it inferior to the original. Cook helped to further define Glantri and magic, showing how the wizards design their spells and push the boundaries of magic. And in his defense, he was writing a storyline that was rapidly being painted in a corner that the company was giving up on as he was writing it. He did the best he could with the restrictions that he was given. It was probably an impossible task no matter who you gave it to. It is undeniable that after Wrath of the Immortals, the quality of the Mystara products really went downhill, though. Transitioning Mystara to 2nd edition did give the game a little bit more life, but unfortunately the quality of the products that were released, with a few exceptions with the Red Steel, really didn't justify stringing the game along when all of the original designers had left for various reasons. Mystara at this point had become like one of those long-running shows on the Sci-Fi Channel where you tuned in for the first few years because it was really good. Then they started replacing actors, and so you stopped watching, but then you decided to check it out, and it's like its 9th or 10th year, and then you realize they've completely replaced the entire cast. The director's different, the writing's different, and you can't follow the plot. The only expansion that people even remember from 2nd edition that I've heard speak of favorably is the Red Steel box set, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the known world. It overrode the Savage Coast module, but that was almost a blank sheet of paper from the lack of detail on there. But like the Hollow World, it was kind of its own standalone setting that was, while it was on the same continent, there was a huge geographic gap between the known world and Red Steel. The 2nd edition books that tied into the known world, nothing stands out. Nothing at all. And Dupuy told me the problem with the almanacs was about 40% of it was just cut and paste from one to the other with nothing being changed. The 2nd edition accessories were generally a cheap cash grab. The 2nd edition modules were largely forgettable. The novels we don't speak of too loudly, and I have read the Dragon Lord series, and there's a reason why. I'm not going to be reviewing the modules. They really didn't add anything to the storyline, which was sad. I will say it now, I strongly believe Wrath of the Immortals broke Mystara. They had just finished writing up the new world. They had finished defining all of the nations, though the Trugan book could have been a lot better. You've defined the game world, so the first thing you want to do is blow it up? No. 1st edition Glantri was a very hot mess because the nation consisted of pretty much very powerful, very dangerous, bickering children. Glantri was set up as an extremely isolationist, xenophobic nation with extreme ethical lapses. Bruce Hurd put so much politics into Glantri in the first book that he actually had to ask them to go from 64 to 96 pages just so he could put all of the information in. Everyone was backstabbing everyone. There were so many secret societies that you could be helping your ally in one way and then backstabbing them without realizing it because you're opposing the secret society that they're part of. Between the political secret societies and the Order of the Radiance and the secret crafts of Glantri and just general nobility games, this was like a super-powered game of diplomacy. The 2nd edition of Glantri killed off, got rid of, or emasculated pretty much half of the princes. It adds Dolores, who is a great villain in her own right, but she overshadows of the other people, and many of the other princes stop being threats and just start being pawns. Of the new princes that are introduced, one of which is just an extension of the other Ethengar principality, and the other one is so nice of a guy that nobody messes with him. That's boring. That's not Glantrian. And that's what I was trying to explain why this one doesn't work as well as the first one. Is yes, it's got the plots, but it doesn't have just the sheer number and the sheer quality of the plots. Glantri had 3 of the principalities gaining help from the outside nations of Alfheim and Alphatia and Thyatis, and they're all gone. And because Alphatia and Thyatis are gone, Rittenberg, which was the principality that was comprised of people from both of the 2 empires, loses part of its background. The entire plot behind Glantri becomes all about sin, and she becomes the face of Glantri. Yes, we've got a unifying villain, but we've lost the theme of what made Glantri good in the first place. For every prince, there was at least 2 foils. If you wanted to stop someone, you had to get help from one of their enemies. And just because you were both enemies of the same person, that didn't make you friends. With everybody either dead, gone, or just opposing or supporting sin, you've gotten rid of everything that made the Glantri book awesome. Okay, I've been trying to figure out how to say that for about an hour now, and I just finally figured out what the problem with this book was. And it goes back to the problem with Wrath of the Immortals, taking out all the tension in the setting. Trying to stop a dragon from taking over the principalities is a nice plot, but it's just a plot. What happened to all the nobles being pulled out of their bed in the middle of the night by the disciples of the Radiance for learning too much? Everybody constantly trying to kick Etienne d'Amberville out of the Great School of Magic. Instead, they've replaced him with somebody that everybody likes and gets along with because he's just a nice guy. Nice guys don't live long in Glantri. You don't find nice guys in Glantri in positions of power. You find them face down in a canal. Yes, this source book gives great ideas for new magic spells and everything else. It's a Monte Cook product. You would not expect less. But while he added all this new magic, he cut out all of the politics, which was the original reason we were attracted to Glantri. Glantri is Harry Potter meets Game of Thrones. No, not Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is nowhere near deadly enough to explain how Glantri politics works. It's Harry Potter meets I, Claudius. There are two types of power players in Glantri, the very good and the very dead, and there is very little between them. Kingdoms of Magic captured the look of Glantri, but it did not capture its soul. I'm going to be knocking out the second edition modules. There's only 3, and complete with their own CDs that are required to play. These modules are not well regarded, even without the gimmick CD. I'm going to start with Mark of Amber, which is arguably the best of the second edition, and with the writers being Jeff Grubb and Aaron Alston, among others. It had better be. So until next time we talk, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. Unless you're Greek Orthodox and you hear from me before January 7th, and then I'll wish you a Merry Christmas then.